Thank you, Sir Graham. There are many things wrong with this bill, and obviously today we're focused on the creation of this yet another unelected body with the monitoring responsibilities to investigate devolved decisions. Now, we know the government, this current government, seems very keen on appointing record numbers of unelected roles. They know that they threatened to abolish the Electoral Commission, so they don't like oversight. But yet another bureaucratic body to investigate and veto what elected politicians decide in the devolved administrations, is that really what we need? Just because the Prime Minister and perhaps his government are averse to democracy and oversight doesn't mean that the rest of us are. And perhaps, if I might be so bold, is this perhaps more about the fact that the party opposite are unable to win an election in Scotland or Wales and have been unable to do so since 1957 and want to implement their own policies in disregard of the elected wishes of the Scottish people who elect democratically their Parliament at Holyrood, that's actually what this bill is all about. It's perhaps taken lessons from some of the donors in the Kremlin. This unnecessary new body will decide whether or not a bill meets its new test for the internal market, putting permanent constraints on devolved competencies of the Scottish and Welsh Parliaments and the Northern Irish Assembly. We cannot support such an anti-democratic move in principle or in practice. We seek, with the amendments lodged in the names of my honourable friend, to remove its remit from Scotland. The Office of the Internal Market should not be given the powers to monitor the regulatory provisions that apply in Scotland, but do not apply to the whole of the UK. This is nothing short of a threat to Scottish democracy. And when we look at the oversight, how are the decisions of the IOM actually going to be scrutinised? Yes, there's a report that needs to be lodged, and it will be lodged annually in this place, but there's nothing in this that tells us at what point that appears before members. Is it something like an estimates day? What is the process whereby members of this place can actually genuinely scrutinise the decisions of the IOM? We need to know that. I mean, how can we possibly give any kind of clarity to how this would work if we don't know that process of simple oversight and scrutiny? The regulations being proposed to set up this body are not only unwarranted, but they lack the necessary clarity of the extent of its remit, how the CMA will receive and consider proposals for investigations, the essential mechanisms for democratic scrutiny of the membership, dispute resolution. At the very least, it should be essential for all four administrations to agree at every stage. As the Royal Society of Edinburgh stated, the use of this authority against the wishes of the devolved administrations constitute a failure of intergovernmental relations. What happened to the respect agenda? We were told that we were in a union of equals, we were to lead, not leave. Where's that gone? Let's make this simple. The scrutiny of bills passed at Holyrood should be undertaken in Holyrood. There are transparent, proportionate processes in place, the Scottish Parliament for scrutiny bills and for the input of key stakeholders, including business, public authorities and the public. Replacing this with an unelected body, an unclear process, is a retrograde step for transparency in our own democracy. It could result in vested interests with financial clout having undue influence in regulatory challenging the decisions of our own elected representatives. We hear a lot about unelected bureaucrats, and we did have a lesson from the honourable member from Stirling earlier, highlighting that actually some of these so-called unelected bureaucrats are indeed, in fact, elected. This is a genuinely unelected quango that we're seeing established. There is no need for the creation of a new body which could scupper much of the excellent, evidence-based policy work which has served Scotland so well. Policies such as minimum pricing in alcohol, maintaining free higher education, pose no threat to the integrity of the Union, but could clearly fall foul of the rules for this new internal market.
I'm grateful to my friend for giving way and commend him on a powerful speech, but would he share my concern that, as well as the general structure of this, it is beyond ludicrous that at this late stage in the day, we still don't know who these individuals are going to be, how they're going to be appointed, who they will serve, and what policy they will actually implement.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. You could be forgiven for thinking that this bill was being rushed through without a huge amount of thought being put behind it. Not that I could ever suggest any such thing. The very premise of the internal market on which this bill is based is false. It seems to regard differences in policy decisions taken across different parts of the countries and nations as somehow a bad thing, an irritating bump in the road that somehow has to be smoothed out. That's devolution. That's the whole point and principle of devolution, that decisions can be made in a devolved administration. It was designed to respect localised democracy and better meet the differing priorities in different parts of the United Kingdom. Instead, under this bill, the centralising tendencies of this unequal union are being put into overdrive. The Scottish Government has always recognised the importance of free trade across the Isles. We have a system in place to govern trading arrangements across the UK consisting of reserved and devolved competencies. Where work is at an intersection of EU law, the four governments can and should work jointly through the common framework process. Although this involves concepts that might be difficult for the government benches to grasp: mutual trust, respect and constructive dialogue, none of which are evident in this bill. These processes are already there to ensure the continued frictionless trade across the UK that all of us want to see, and the Scottish Government happily signed up to this process. It is the correct way to proceed. This bill is a political move to curb the power of the devolved administrations, and if this government continues to seek to guarantee the controlled right of UK companies to trade unhindered in every part of the UK, they should get on with it and use the processes that are already there. But do the processes within this bill mean that private health or private water companies operating in other parts of the country could soon have a guarantee to work in Scotland, where these are public companies? It's a constitutional and legislative mess. It's a blatant political move to scupper those rebellious Scots who just don't seem to fall for the charms of the Prime Minister. He's throwing his toys out of the pram and taking the huff and saying it's my ball and you can't have it. The Prime Minister has the brass neck to pretend yesterday that each devolved administration will be fully and equally involved in the monitoring the internal market, despite sovereignty resting wholly with the Westminster Government. If he's speaking in good faith, it could happen, then the government benches will be backing our amendments tonight. This would at least require the approval of devolved administrations, bringing in at least a degree of democracy and accountability to what is effectively an unelected body. This surely has to be a simple thing to support.